Hello and welcome to our very first ever episode of Main Game, the show where we talk about the exciting world of gaming. I'm your host Iffah Hazim and I'm very excited to be presenting something new, hip and fresh just for you. In a nutshell, Main Game is about the wide and wonderful world of video games, from the hottest news topics this week to a deep dive into the game industry, game culture, history, and esports. So, without further ado, we're going to go on to our first segment of the day, which is Lowdown. With me right now is my co-host Lewis Larcombe of Kakuchopurei. He is incredibly knowledgeable about esports. So, Lewis, say hi to the camera.
Hi, my name's Lewis. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Lewis, maybe you can start off with telling us what are your favorite games and your competitive games.
I think I come from an FPS background, first-person shooters, so I mainly grew up playing Call of Duty, and then I think other games like Valorant and CSGO definitely cater towards my interests as well.
Okay, so Lewis, 2023, what competitive games do you think will get bigger and more airtime this year?
It might be a bit of a cop-out answer, but I believe that esports is still growing. It's still in its infancy as an industry, but I think that if I had to choose a game that was probably gonna dominate the rest of 2023, I think it's probably gonna be Valorant.
Okay, Valorant is Louis' choice. So speaking of the latter, our first segment is an exclusive. We have scored with a minister from Malaysia who happens to love gaming and esports. Age and position know no limits when it comes to this awesome hobby. This interview took place during the Malaysia Amateur Esports League known as LEAP, that's short for Liga Esports Antara Parlimen. YB Nik Nazmi has a lot to say about the esports scene given his interest in the field, as he has expressed interest in getting more people into gaming as a whole in Malaysia. Check it out.
Hello and welcome to LEAP 2023, the first ever Interparliamentary Esports Tournament, which is an initiative by YB Nik, our Minister of Environment and Climate Change. What are your thoughts about the current esports scene in Malaysia, and where do you hope to see it in the next future?
When I look at how the younger generation, they've managed to really grow when it comes to the gaming scene. Now we have what we call esports. We have, even in my own constituency, people who have successfully become professionals, professional gamers. So my whole idea is that we want to see this whole thing grow big and successfully, and that there's more direction to the scene. So there's a lot of potential. I think Malaysia can go really far.
So recently, YB Hanayo, the Minister of Youth and Sports, mooted the idea of introducing esports into the school's curriculum. So what do you think about this initiative, and where do you think and how do you think it can benefit the esports in general and even the constituents in Setiawangsa?
Yes, so I think that's pretty much goes in line with what I was saying, is that while we have various success stories when it comes to esports, but in order for us to go far, it has to be more institutionalized. Parents need assurance because they want to know that esports is not just something people do for fun or because of some negative connotations to gaming and whatnot. So if we can show that direction, we can show the institutionalized approach, then we can go really far. And my argument has always been that if you take a football analogy, you have people who are very talented who come out from the streets, the villages in South America, in Africa, and they develop through the scene. But then you also have people in Europe, for example, who succeed via the academy, proper training, proper nutrition and all that from the youngest age. So if Malaysia is now more of the former, and in order to go to the latter, where there's more structure to it, I believe that what YB Hana said is the way to go. And I also believe that we can go even further than what we have today in our sort of unstructured approach. We can go further once we have direction, once we have vision from the authorities.
Down the road, where do you hope to see Malaysia in terms of esports in the medium to the long term? I mean, just as not just as a parent, but also as someone who is within the community.
So yeah, I mean, we started this whole event, right, as with LEAP, Liga Esports Antara Parlimen, with this whole idea that I want to do something in my constituency, but rather than just being stuck in Setiawangsa, then we decided to rope in YB Shahrizan, who's the MP for Bangi. So the whole idea now is to have this interparliamentary thing. So my hope, I mean, at least at this grassroots thing, is that we will have one day, maybe not 222 parliament in the near future, but at least, you know, enough parliamentary constituencies, maybe one at least in every state. So then, you know, we can really start to grow the mass at the grassroots level, and then it can spur more activities. And you know, other people will see the value of these competitions, and then they want to replicate. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, it's not like, oh, we just want to do this and we don't want other people to do it. We want this to encourage more activities. It's cross-party, it's multiracial. In fact, it can even be intergenerational. You know, maybe one day we can even include the older games, the games from when we were growing up, 1980s, 1990s. Yeah. So those things can be done to make it like really a holistic thing. You can have more of the competitive games that are really popular, and you can go professional, but even more those for fun types that's more nostalgic for our generation. And I think that's something we can be done to make this something big and fun. You know, just like we all know, whenever a certain day you go for Pasar Malam. So maybe one time we'll reach a time where, a certain time of the year there'll be an esports tournament, and everyone from maybe one day when we become grandfathers, from the grandparents all the way to the chuchu, they all look forward to it. That will be something.
And that was quite an interview with Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi. I didn't know that he was that enthusiastic about starting up an amazing league like that. So, Luis, were you surprised about how enthusiastic YB was?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, that in that interview, he definitely conveyed that he sees the potential in esports. And as somebody who absolutely loves and adores esports, that's great to see from somebody, you know, who's a member of parliament. You know.
Okay. All right, Luis, let's go back in time. Suppose you were supposed to participate in LEAP Season 1 2023. So maybe you can share with us which game that you participated and excelled with and why.
I think out of the games that we had selected, I would probably say Mobile Legends. I have a history with MOBAs, which are just top-down strategy games that require a lot of teamwork. And plus, I also have a history with mobile games, so I'd probably say Mobile Legends.
All right, thanks, Luis. Okay, I have so much other questions I want to talk to you about, but we're going to take a breather and we're going to come back more on Main Game. We are back again. Since we are still on the esports hype train, how about a quick history lesson? This next segment is about how competitive gaming started, and here is Main Game's history of esports.
Since the dawn of time, mankind has always yearned for competition. Whether it's football or even a one-on-one game of badminton, people love to watch others compete for bragging rights, entertainment, and, well, mostly entertainment. Because these televised bouts are usually for professionals and high-level players. So it's only natural that in the digital realm, competitive gaming is born. Or esports as one would call it, eventually. But where did it all start from? How did it come to be? Well, let's dish out the facts. 1972. Stanford University was the first ever esports battleground for all players of all ages everywhere, where they compete in a game of competitive space war. with the grand prize being a year's subscription to long-running music magazine Rolling Stone. A far cry from the US $7 million a team could win in a worldwide major game series. But we had to start somewhere. The trend continued with another big name in video game history, Sega. Sega, a very popular video game name in the 80s, 90s, and even up to now. Before the Japanese company wowed the gaming world with its mascot platformer Sonic the Hedgehog and its 16-bit console marvel, the Sega Mega Drive, the company made waves in the arcade machines business and kept on the streak of competitive gaming in the early days. In 1974, in the era of arcade machines, Sega was at the top of the proverbial leaderboards in early esports. This is for the sake of the importance of such tournaments to foster better business relationships between the maker/location/customer and create an atmosphere of competition on TV amusement games. Already you can see the seeds being planted, but only blossoming partly through. It will make headway with the following game in 1978. Space Invaders, a 2D shoot-'em-up game from Taito with a simple concept: destroy all aliens before they reach the city, i.e. the ground. Space Invaders was so popular, it's made its way into pop culture and TV shows. Why? Because the game popularized the persistent high-score system where everyone at the time competed to see who can get the highest score. To do so, you need to destroy the alien ships and survive as long as possible. And thus, high-score chasing in the early 80s was commonplace when it came to Space Invaders. Old-school esports, essentially. Still, it's hard to keep track of scores, especially official ones. So you need an official body to keep tabs on who the best players are and who owns the highest scores. How about the first bookkeeping and records holder in history? Way before the internet and apps could do all that, there needed to be an official score tally to keep track of the top players. Twin Galaxies was the first prominent company that had the job of keeping arcade score records from the late 70s onward. Televised esports also started off in the 80s. The first show that did this was USA's Starcade, which had contestants beat each other's high scores on an arcade game. Many other shows spawned from there on out. Competitive gaming had always been high score based, but in 1991, there was one game that brought the head-to-head aspect of the sport. A literal game changer, one might say. The 1 vs 1 fighting game genre came headway in 1991, thanks to the Capcom-created mega-hit arcade title Street Fighter II. With a varied roster of characters with different sets of skills and a versus setting, the fighting game genre was perfect for a competition. No more was there a need to keep track of high scores. Competing players just have to win matches by beating opponents in 2 out of 3 bouts. High score-based competitions were still big, with Nintendo capitalizing on this with the 1990 Nintendo World Championships. Way before Riot Games and Valve made big esports event splashes, Nintendo did so with this contest, with the finals being held at Universal Studios Hollywood in California. The finals even had a prestigious special edition cartridge with its own set of existing games, created just for competition use. Elsewhere in the realm of computer gaming, a competitive gaming storm was brewing. First-person shooters popularized by mega-hit id Software game Doom introduced the concept of LAN gaming, where players connected with each other with multiple PCs in the same room to play and compete against each other in competitive gaming. The term deathmatch was born, where the winner was determined by the player with the highest kill count. This was a combination of both Street Fighter's knockout mechanic and the scoring system set by arcade game competitions. The year 2000 onward is bigger, with the advent of PC gaming taking center stage. But that's a story for another time. Join us in the next episode as we talk about the big and bright future of esports.
That was Main Game's History of Esports. I hope you've learned a lot about how the 80s and 90s were a hotbed of competitive gaming. You have to know real roots before you start appreciating them, right, Luis?
Yeah, exactly. I think analogy I like to use is that you have to learn to walk before you can run, right? And that's exactly what they did with this. I feel like to really appreciate esports as it is today, I think we really need to understand where it really came from.
Correct. Knowing your roots is super important, especially in gaming. Okay, so we're going to take a break and we're going to come back with more on Main Game. And we are back again. So, Luis, which games that actually got you interested in esports growing up?
I think I mentioned this earlier, but I grew up playing Call of Duty. I think that was my real bread and butter. Just everything about it. I just love the competitive nature and atmosphere about it. And from that, yeah, I managed to just get into the world of esports just thanks to my obsession with Call of Duty. So.
Okay, you're making me miss out on the good old days of gaming, okay? But maybe this title might bring me back to the fold. Earlier, we did bring up the 2D fighting game Street Fighter 2 as being the pinnacle of early esports. So what better way to cap off our first episode of Main Game than with our deep dive into the 6th mothership numbered title. Here are our insights on one of this year's top competitive games, Street Fighter 6.
The Street Fighter franchise from Capcom has been defining the concept of 2D fighting gameplay since Street Fighter 2 back in 1991. The simple concept of two people fighting each other with special moves and fighting styles, beating each other up until your opponent's life goes to 0, resulting in a knockout. Now in the year 2023, we are graced with the presence of what could be the series' most defining entry. Street Fighter 6 retains the same style of competitive gameplay. Two players enter the ring, they fight using their many skills in the best 2 out of 3 matches, and the loser is the opponent who gets knocked out first. You have your choice of 18 playable fighters, with each of them having different playstyles, skills, quirks, and personality traits. Beginners new to fighting games will want to use the game's poster child Luke and Street Fighter veterans Ryu and Guile. If you want a more complex playstyle, you can try out the Russian wrestler Zangief and debonair gentleman JP. What distinguishes Street Fighter 6 from its past entries is the core fighting game mechanic, the drive system. The drive system lets you pull off fancy attacks, defensive moves, and powered up special moves universal to everyone in the roster. It's a powerful tool, but if you deplete its gauge, you enter in a weakened state called burnout that leaves you vulnerable to fast attacks and counter-offensive moves. Capping this off are your super arts, which deal a lot of damage and are great to end your onslaught of combination attacks. With all these gameplay and tools combined, you have yourself a fun competitive experience that is not only a joy to play, learn and master, but to also spectate. And yes, it does take a while to master the game, but luckily Street Fighter 6's other few modes and options help ease the journey for new players. Street Fighter 6's World Tour mode is essentially an adventure mode where you create your own fighting game character, learn a bunch of moves from different masters, and also get the hang of the overall gameplay. A number of side missions and main quests in World Tour mode teaches you how to block, use the drive gauge and its slew of skills, and how to use special moves. The mode even teaches you how to use the game's modern control setting, which simplifies all commands and inputs for the current generation of new players. The game also has tutorials and character guides, along with character combo trials. This is so that you can learn and relearn the basics and advanced techniques of the game. If you want to learn how to play a new fighter like Kimberly, the Ninja Superstar, and the brick wall known as Marissa, Street Fighter 6's tools will sort you out. Coupled with an amazing art style with a lovely sense of visual flair, some decent fight music, and a slew of other fight modes, Street Fighter 6 is indeed the full package. If you need just one major fighting game this year, pick Street Fighter 6. You will not regret it, whether you're a new player or a veteran.
There you have it, the Street Fighter 6. So, Luis, maybe you can share with us what's your favorite Street Fighter from 1 to 6?
Well, I actually don't have much experience with fighting games. Street Fighter 6 is, surprisingly enough, my first actual Street Fighter. So I've had a chance to play it now, and as somebody who isn't really familiar with Street Fighter games, it is a bit hard and tedious for me to learn the controls, memorize combos, and just learn how the actual mechanics work, because they're not like any other fighting games. So.
Okay, maybe you can share with us your favorite, person in Street Fighter, because as for me, if you ask me, I love Chun-Li.
I mean, yeah, Chun-Li I feel is a cult classic. I feel like everyone loves Chun-Li as well, like Cammy as well. I think I'm probably a sucker for the two main guys, like Ryu and Ken, just because they're just so iconic, they are the face of the brand. They are introducing new characters in this new installment, but I don't know, I think that you can't really go wrong with the classics.
Okay, what are your hopes and expectations for gamers out there, especially those who are into Street Fighter?
I think that, especially for the esports side of things, Street Fighter is just, it doesn't get enough recognition, I don't think. It's still one of the biggest fighting games in the world and probably one of the most passionate esports scenes in the world, but it just doesn't get enough recognition, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that with the release of this new game, it can definitely just pick up and a lot of people will just want to learn how to play Street Fighter.
Okay, one piece of advice to all the gamers out there, in general?
I wouldn't know, to be honest. I'm so bad myself. I don't think I could give any good advice.
All right, it's okay. All right, thank you so much, Luis. And that is it for our very first episode of Main Game. We hope you enjoyed our debut episode.
In the next few episodes, we will be delving into more of the history of esports, recapping the greatest moments in gaming history, talk more about the many games that are slated for 2023, interview a good number of video game industry folks and experts about why they are exactly in the business, and also deliver a few more surprises along the way.
I'm Iffah Hazim, your host.
And I'm Lewis Larcombe.
And thank you for tuning in. Goodbye for now, and may you be blessed with one-ups and extra continues for the journey ahead. Goodbye.